Okay, so anime and otaku art in general is something that is very misunderstood in the West and technically even Japan. But specifically in the West, there is a push against it. No matter how popular it gets, how accepted it gets, there's an active push against otaku art. And it's a strong bias. It's a corporate interest, it's a social interest. You could argue on any level in the West, any institutional level, that there is interest against anime and otaku art. So, conventional art wisdom, even before pushing against anime and all that stuff, even before attacking it, conventional art wisdom pushed in the West will actually destroy your ability to draw anime, to draw otaku art. And actually, ironically, it will actually even destroy your ability to even do Western styles properly, which is quite funny, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But it's basically just a lot of lies, a lot of ladder kicking, all that stuff. And even in Japan, in Japanese, it can actually be explained a little poorly, or even at times flat out incorrectly, how the art works and everything that goes into it and what's happening on a technical level. And Japan is actually full of good advice, though. That's the difference. It's full of good advice, but they just don't have a lot of need for complete accuracy, and sometimes they just are kind of scared to teach it properly anyway. And the thing is that they have a healthy economy of artists, where artists they're never going to stop learning how to do it right. There's never going to stop being new artists who are doing it right. Whereas in the West, it's a miracle if someone can pop up and draw anime properly. So now that we have what I call American anime and then Koreatoons, we are actually beginning to kind of I say beginning, but this has been a problem for a long time. It's just a little more noticeable now because of social media and whatnot. Other cases of it being pushed too, but it's pseudo anime. It's like stuff that kind of looks like anime. Yeah, it's got kind of the broad traits and stuff. You kind of draw the characters. These are the shapes. These are kind of the eyes you associate with anime. Maybe some of the tropes you associate with anime. But the technique is different. The technique is not all the things that really make anime, that really make otaku art, because it's not those broad traits. It's the actual tangible technique. So they're essentially polluting. It's almost like you can almost think of it like a parody of anime or something, and that's polluting the whole scene right now, very bad. So it's just not a good time for truth about art in the West, and I want to dispel that as a researcher of comprehensive otaku knowledge. It's my duty to essentially dispel these misunderstandings. So much of this video will actually inherently cover some of the stuff that Saito Naoki did before his channel got showed. But I'm going to get into it a little more directly, a little more focused on exactly what you're going to be doing wrong, exactly what's in your head, your misconceptions, all that stuff. So, first thing, quality in art comes from understanding 2D aesthetic and the laws of 2D fundamentally, which comes from understanding a style thoroughly. That's to say that if you thoroughly understand a proper anime style, then you properly understand all the fundamental laws of 2D aesthetic. And that's a hard thing to wrap your head around because it's actually intangible. It's kind of like what I was saying about literature, how it's intangible. Art, at the end of the day, is actually not that different. It just uses tangible tools. And that can be a little confusing, but it can be absolutely shown, empirically measured, just like I said. It can be comprehensively understood. You just have to get rid of your current misconceptions. So, that means two things. First, there are no generic exercises like drawing boxes or studying anatomy that will actually build any skill at all. Like, that will not build your skill. If you're moving your pen around, you might be building comfort or something, blah, 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 all that. That's completely different, but actual skill, actual comprehensive, hard understanding of art, you're not building that through that. There's no generic thing. I'm not even going to get into all of them because they've been done to death. I'm not going to go through every Western talking point about you need your anatomy, my cubes, whatever. I'm not going to address all that. You've probably seen it. You've probably heard it. Everyone has. It's all garbage. Just throw it all out. What you need to understand is exactly what is aesthetically happening on the actual 2D level, the actual lines, the harmony between the lines, the shapes, the style, and I'll show that all in detail in a minute. But we're not going to hit everything because there's just too much technique-wise, but you will understand exactly how you should be practicing and exactly what you should be looking for. So, Western art styles themselves, as I said, they actually betray the they betray 2D aesthetic in the comprehensive sense. They actually will fight the laws that make a picture look good, but at the same time they are walking this tightrope where they need to uphold them to even be art or be an appealing style in the first place. So it's like they'll tell you, yeah, my cubes and all that stuff, but then they'll like break that rule the next minute, and then they'll say something is good for the reason it's not actually good, and they'll say something is bad for the reason it's not actually bad. It's just pure chaos. It's just pure ladder kicking. It's just, sometimes it's raw insanity. So Western art is essentially how good can we be while insidiously fucking things up. And in many ways, Americanime is kind of like the final boss of that. It's like, how much can we look like, how much can we imitate the art that's correct, but fuck it up, you know? And that's incredibly disgusting. So to now get into it, I'm going to introduce two very, very important ways to improve, probably the most vital ways to practice for a beginner, intermediate. Even, you know, this is even important for anyone of any skill level. So, first thing I'm going to talk about is you've probably, if you're interested in art, you've probably seen these before. These are what they call animation sette, and they are for essentially showing the team how to draw a certain character, and the character designer draws these, and they are essentially what the most perfect form of the style looks like. So because of that, they're perfect for learning. And the first practice thing I'm going to do is show you what a face study of one of these looks like. And it's important to understand that you need to take one of these that is preferably within the last like 8 years or so. If you're going outside of that, you need to really know what you're doing and have a specific reason for why you're taking from it. Preferably within the last like 8 years or so, give or take. And if you really want to improve, you need to stick to one very thoroughly. You need to take one and you need to comprehensively study it. And by comprehensively, that means get to the point where you're drawing it very accurately when you go to copy it. And I'm going to show you right now. We're going to start, and this is the thing. There's a couple things with how you want to go about it. As you can see right now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm not going to be doing any rough stuff, like any, you know, like I set up my, you know, rough drawing stuff. I'm not going to be doing that because the purpose here is not to imitate the exact method by which you would draw an original picture. The purpose here is to understand and observe everything that's going on in this drawing, every line, every single line, placed with intent.
because that is knowledge that is directly teaching you fundamentally what's happening on the 2D level. And the first thing to understand is that you're not just trying to go, oh, okay, I did a drawing. That's great. That means that like I can copy something to this level and I'm good to go. Let's move on. I get that a lot with beginners where they'll draw something and they'll be like, oh, what do you think? Here is my drawing. It's almost like asking, am I ready to move on and do, who knows what else. But the thing that you have to understand is that you're fundamentally trying to know everything about this drawing. You're trying to, first of all, the first thing is you're trying to memorize all of the key shapes, and even more than just memorizing the key shapes, you're trying to figure out exactly how and why they work. And that's a very scary thing for people. What do you mean how and why the core shapes work? And that's a common fear I see get thrown around a lot. Won't I just only know how to do this drawing if I copy this drawing? Well, the answer is actually no, that is not true. If you're actively paying attention to all, and I'm going to do this one a little bit, because we don't want to be here all day. I'm going to be doing this one a little rougher and faster than usual, but I'm still showing the process exactly how I would normally do it, just a little quicker. It's no, you are actually, as long as you're trying to do it over and over and you're seeking accuracy will inevitably lead to understanding exactly how and why these shapes work. If you're combining it with actively trying to draw in the style, the target style that you're copying, if you do these studies and then afterward you go and you actually try to draw something original in this style, you will piece by piece pick up everything that's happening on the fundamental shape and gestural level in the actual style that you're imitating, in the style that you're trying to understand. And that's the thing, it is not fast. This is not a quick process. This is something that can go much faster the better you can get. Well, first of all, here's the first tip. This iris relationship stuff, this is one of the most important things to watch out for, because it's one of the most like core identity driven things of a style. And that's one of those things that you're there's no end to how much better you can get at like knowing exactly how that works. And you're always gonna be, because like even here, it's fine to like essentially try to remember, okay, from this pose they have this kind of, they have this kind of distance generally, or this kind of shape is sort of formed between them or whatever. It's very important to keep doing that until it's like absolutely burned into your brain, and fundamentally know everything that makes it not work, everything that makes it like not look good, so that you know everything that you can do. And that's one of those things where it's like you're not gonna ever be thinking about cubes and shit. You're not gonna be thinking about like, oh, what's my heckin' anatomy or my heckin' 3D space or whatever, and get that right. That comes from actively trying to draw shit from imagination in a certain style. That's what gets it right, because it literally gets the specific look of the style right. I've literally, I'm not even kidding, I've seen people before take like an anime drawing that they're trying to learn how to draw anime, and they'll study it and they'll do like some Spider-Man mask shit. They'll be like, okay, my planes. And they start drawing like fucking Spider-Man looking like this. I saw someone doing this with a Neptune drawing, and it's like, dude, that just, this isn't gonna help. That has nothing to do with anything. It's just incredibly foolish. And that people who can actually draw are basically just laughing when they see that. Even if they're, sick in the head enough to fool themselves, they see that kind of thing, they're just laughing because they just know that, like, it's bullshit. And they know that they got you barking up the wrong tree, and you're never going to get good from that. And what happens is you're going to get sick of it. You're going to get sick of doing it. And you're always going to end up, going toward some kind of lie. Some kind of lie is going to get promoted through that. Either you're going to start, saying, anime as a whole is retarded, or if you do start actually finally learning how to draw, you're probably going to get, like, taught by someone who draws American anime cringe or some shit. Anything of that sort. It's going to be just shit like that. I've seen it a lot. I see it on IC and stuff. It's like, oh, I started and I was trying to draw anime and shit, and it just didn't work out. I couldn't figure it out. So, here's my style now, and it's like some disgusting, like, Koreatoon, monstrosity thing, American anime thing. Just very, very gross, kind of, like, just foul thing that has nothing to do with anime aesthetic. And what's funny is, like, they will actually pat themselves on the back for that. It's actually the kind of the sickest part about it, is they'll be like, oh yeah, I finally figured it out. It's almost like I figured out that actual anime was stupid, and I finally took the American Anime Max pill, and now it's, like, working for me, and here's my disgusting art, and here's other mentally ill people who gave me affirmation for it, specifically because they hate being based in otaku and they want to destroy all based in otaku shit. It's like, that's what I see a lot of, and it's really pretty foul. And it's funny too, because, like, I mean, I've literally even seen cases of people who literally find out how to even draw properly, and then something so fucked up in their head will actually make them go against that. They'll actually betray it. They'll just start doing disgusting American anime shit or something, as if, like, they insist that that's the right thing to do. And it really is an eye-opener, because it makes you realize, oh wow, the West is just kind of diseased on a really fundamental level. It's like, okay, you had the chance to do it right, but you're actively doing it wrong. You're actively making an abomination. And it's just really wacky, and it always goes back to being like an irony weeb, or some kind of parasite, some kind of weird, like I said, weird incel-y thing, some kind of simp thing. It's just that's always what it's gonna amount to, and it's just sickening. Now from there, there's more universal things. There's less mentally ill pitfalls that you'll encounter, and one of them is just the sort of, like, Western, I guess you could call it the sort of default Western delusion of grandeur, and that's the fact that Westerners tend to have a very hard time understanding that they have a role, that we actually we live in a society in the Joker sense, and you have a role. You have a role to do, and people just don't like that role. It's almost like it's stigmatized, and it's like, no, I need to be the one. I need to be the guy who is special. I need to be the special one, and that will directly fuck up your art, and that will directly influence your inability to do exercises like these, where you're just kind of carefully seeing what the fuck is going on. You're putting your ego aside, and you're just asking, what is this art doing? You're just simply asking, how does it work? Just teach me how it works. Teach me what you know that I don't know. And instead you get this idea that like, oh, I need some kind of identity thing. And again, even maybe it's because they're westernized, or maybe this is just a innate flaw that human beings are prone to. But even in Japan, I remember, in Saito's video where he talks about how, this is the shit you have to do. He addressed how it's very common for them to have this fear, this like lack of originality, where is me? And his answer to that was something very simple. He simply says, your originality is going to come out no matter what. Like, you're just gonna, your art is coming from you, so you're always going to show up, and it's not something you think about. And that's a very practical answer. That's very true. But more importantly than that, you have to ask, well, what is your concern? What is this weird concern for originality and self-expression in the first place? Because it's like, does otaku art exist to, first of all, what is this self-expression? Why is there this strange concept of self-expression that is fighting the way to do things right? Is doing things right not self-expression? Is it not self-expression? Is that not your identity to do this stuff right? And if it's not, then yeah, you shouldn't be an artist, because you should only be an artist if you're doing it right. You should only be an artist if you're going to be a based in otaku artist. And I've had people even come to me too and be like, oh, well, I think Western art is fine, and I also think otaku art is fine, and I don't like American anime because it's or Koreatoons because it's a strange mixture, and that's why I said no. It's just as simple as it's bad because it's not based on otaku. There's one right way to do things, and that's it. And you're only gonna ever break that for predictable reasons. It's always gonna be the same shit. I actually put a little too much space here. It's not a huge deal, isn't it? Looks a little darky. In cases like these, you can, if you want, kind of lasso it up. There's no harm in doing that. That can help illuminate things if you suspect something's off. You don't have to. I've seen like weird shit. Like, I remember Fang Zhu, who's one of those weird, like, he's Chinese, and he's one of those weird, like, commercial concept artists that kind of photo bashes and draws like he's trying to become like Blender guru, but manually, like, just bizarre. I don't know how to describe it. It's just, you look him up if you want to see him, like Fang Zhu or whatever. And he had this weird thing. I don't know where it came from, but he said, like, you got to make sure you don't erase or ever use the lasso. And I think Cynics, again, look him up at your own risk. Cynics had a weird thing with that too. Like, don't use multiple layers. Weird shit like that. If you ever see any of those weird neurotic things or whatever, or you see someone being threatened by weird neurotic shit like that, like someone is like actively insecure about that, they're probably a degenerate. That's just really all you need to know. That's all shit there to just obfuscate the truth and whatever. It's just as simple as like right and wrong. And if someone has weird rituals that they're telling you that just don't seem to make sense, like one of them was like, I remember Richard Williams had this weird thing about listening to music. It's all nonsense. Just, no one who is great abides by any of that, and that's all you need to know. At any rate, yeah. The point is that you want to believe that you're a genius. You want to believe that you're a chosen one. You don't want to just give yourself to the info and to the correct info. You want to be a genius, and you're not a genius. That's the thing. Because if you were a genius, you would be doing things right. And you would naturally be drawn to doing things right. And you would naturally learn how to do things right at a young age, just by default, because you're a genius. And those happen very, very seldomly. And the thing is that it's like, it's very, very easy to fall into this idea that maybe you're a genius, or, you know, or maybe you're just simply meant, maybe you're not a genius, but maybe you're just, for some reason, you're not meant to be doing things the normal way and all that shit. And it's an easy illusion to get into, and I've seen people get into that illusion simply because, more than anything, it will create the illusion that you're doing things right more easily when you're going after some originality nonsense. And there's a very specific reason for that. And it's because there's no standard. You're not doing anything. Like right now, it's like every single difference. And I'm not exaggerating when I say every single difference here in my little, you know, kind of copy here. And the original, I'm noting every single one, every single line that is different. I'm noting it. I'm going, okay, that should have been a little bit more like this. That should have been a little more like this. I'm noting every difference, and I'm not just noting them, I'm asking why. I go, okay, that should have been a little bit more like this because that's more gesturally sound, or like, oh, that proportion to that proportion, you know, feels better. That has like better weight distribution to it, directs the focus a little better. Stuff like that, you know. Oh, this is aligned with this because, you know, it creates a tighter relationship between these shapes. Every single thing you're noting, that's a constant stream of aesthetic information. And if you're out there just being like, how do I come up with the next art style that's going to be a hit in Shonen Jump or some shit? How do I become the next One Piece? You know, you're not going to get any of that information. When you draw, you're essentially working with a low density of information, and thus it's easy to get positive reinforcement from that because there's no standard. It's chaos at that point. There's no positive reinforcement at that point. And it's like, the thing is that it's like, if you're trying to do that, again, you're probably thinking about like weird, like incel-y success shit. Like, oh, I need to be identified, I need to be loved, I need to be all these weird things, you know. And if you have, and I'll make actually a whole video detailing every not gonna make it trick, because I've seen it all. I've seen things you would not believe, because there's a lot of them. They're important to know, even if you don't fall into them, because it's important to see the people who have these traits and note it. And everyone who's messing up and everyone who's not perfect yet, you know, can have a little bit of these things, so it's worth knowing them all and stuff. And yeah, like here in the top of the head, I'm just gonna simplify. I'm just trying to simplify it into, right now, I'm just trying to simplify it into the main kind of direction of the whole thing, instead of worrying about every little line right now. But normally I'd be being, you know, much more careful about that stuff. But at any rate, yeah, it's like, that's one of the things, and at this point I'm getting so good at just figuring out who's trying to do art for absolutely retarded reasons. I can kind of sniff them out from a mile away, and you really should just save yourself the time and ask immediately, what the hell am I trying to do this for? Because if it's weird, you know, delusional shit like that, you really should save yourself the pain and pack it up instantly, because that's just where you're going to end up anyway. And now there is really nothing wrong with drawing without the intent of becoming a pro or anything, or making any money off it, just to educate yourself. It's a very relaxing thing to do. It's a nice thing to do. It takes you closer to the art, can give you stronger mind about how you consume and all that stuff. And it can just be a very good thing. You know, you can spread based on otaku knowledge if you have some knowledge. And like I myself, I'm not really an artist. I'm really just a writer, but I use art as just one of my things to further my otaku knowledge and all that stuff and help create a platform for myself and shit. And it's like, there is nothing wrong with just simply getting the info. Okay, so now from here, normally I would put in the tone. Well, normally what I would do is I would put in all the tones and stuff, and then I would very carefully observe everything that's wrong here and all that stuff, and I would, you know, fix it and all that stuff, and throw in all the tones. I'll throw in the main face tone because it's kind of part of the identity of this pose. But at any rate, yeah, that's the gist. You saw the gist of it. It's just a copy, you know, and you're just trying to know everything. And then what I would do after this, I would know everything that went wrong. Like, for example, one of the big ones here is just the head shape. It just keeps bothering me. This stuff, I keep being not happy with this. What I would do is I would normally, if I can just look at it and note what's wrong, and I can instantly know, okay, it was, you know, this kind of like gestural thing's a little fucked up. This is kind of has like this bulgy feely to it. I would just draw it again immediately and just try to, you know, fix that on the next round. If I'm a little bit confused or at my wit's end or whatever, I would actually overlay the original over this and observe every difference like that. And I would use different comparison points. Like I would align the eyes and then compare what's different, or I would align the top of the head and compare what's different. All that kind of stuff. But yeah, in this case, we're just going to move on because you get the gist. We're just carefully copying. And yeah, and you go again, you know, and so, you know, if you've done it a couple times, flip it, do another one, do another pose, go back and forth between these poses. Don't show someone your single drawing and be like, yo, I did my drawing. It's okay, do 100 more, you know, get it right, get these relationships down. And in between those 100 drawings, try to draw drawings out of your head and stuff. Try to do, you know, original stuff. Like, can you, when you go to, like, for example, the reason this is so meaningful is because it's like, oh, after you get this information from this, you can start to go to do, like, your own drawing out of your head. And when you do a rough, you now know, because a rough is not just a shitty, I'll make a whole thing about this. A rough is not just, like, a shitty drawing that you keep correcting. It's knowing it's putting in all the essentials. It's like, okay, yep, I remember that this is sort of that essential head shape for this kind of pose or whatever. You know, I can quickly get, like, the core part of my eye in like that. Yeah, see, that part's too. Whatever. You know, you can just quickly get your stuff in exactly how it should be because you're remembering the core aesthetic of the info you took in, and you're quickly just, okay, that's the, you know, blah blah blah, get my hair and all that shit, because you know the essential info from copying this a million times. You know, like, oh, this was one of the key gestural points, this was one of the whatever, you know, all that shit. So eventually, you know, you can develop essentially what is your own style and stuff, and you can eventually do, you know, original designs like this and stuff. Original poses out of your head completely. You don't have to look at anything because it's like, you know, the essence of what makes a thing work. So the next thing I'm going to show real quick is just basic gesture drawing stuff, gesture drawing practice, and this is the main way that you're going to get better at posing characters and stuff. And the best way is to check out the artist. He's on YouTube, the animator. I call him Hyde, spelled like Hyde. It's pronounced Hide, but check him out because he has, if you go to his playlists, he has a playlist where he does, I think he calls them the 10-minute daily warm-up gesture drawing things or something like that. Hey, you can't really miss it. It's in his saved playlists. And if you just copy him, you draw along with him, or he draws, you pause, you do his drawing or whatever, you will get way better at understanding how to pose. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do this, the Gunner Uni on the left. I'm going to show you what a gesture study of that would look like. And I'm just going to do that real quick. And these are actually fun and sometimes they get difficult. And it's good if it gets difficult because it means it's showing something you don't know. But basically, yeah, you start and you just try to get the gestural alignment of the head and face. Not some weird concept of drawing like fucking Legos or whatever. And I like to get the suggestion of the hair and stuff in here too, just the general flow of the hair, just because it helps, because it's part of, the hair is part of the gesture, and all that stuff. So I like to kind of get the basics of the hair in there too. But at any rate, yeah, it's just the alignment, the gestural alignment. Think about directions. What are the directions that are happening here? Okay, the hair goes that direction. Then the hair goes that direction. Then it goes that direction. That's what you're thinking about. You're not thinking about weird cubes and all that shit. And the more you understand these gestures, like, oh, this is a very satisfying gestural balance when this is aimed like that and then this is aimed like that. That's going to inspire original gestures in yourself after you've done this enough times, which is going to take a long time, but again, it will happen. That's going to make you understand how to make original gestures that are very good. So usually I do it in a specific order. I'm actually even going to kind of put the goggles in real quick, just because they are also help solidify the gesture, just like that. Very simple. So usually you try to get in that upper body area, and it doesn't really matter the exact order, but from here I'm going to like draw a line down corresponding mostly to the kind of feeling of that the belly button gives, where it's like kind of emphasizes how the lower body is more straight down compared to the rib area, which is bent. And yeah, you can't see her groin area because of the skirt, but based on the alignment of the hips and legs and stuff, you can infer that kind of thing, and you can just sort of get in that general feeling that the hip is kind of straight while the chest area is turned like that. And then you can do the shoulder area. The shoulder, you can just kind of, just think of it as a simple shape, simple circle for the time being. And then from there, it's good to, I think Hyde tends to do it that way. He tends to frequently kind of put the hand in its final position first, then sort of draw a little bit of stickman kind of arm thing, and then put in just a little bit of that basic minimal arm shape to make the pose clear. And then at this point, yeah, you can throw in the most basic form of the neck, because the neck is, a reminder of the gesture. And it's easy to kind of figure out exactly how the neck should be when the chest and stuff is there. So you get that in, and then you're also thinking about the alignment of traits. So like, for example, her hand is here on her hip, and then her other hand is down here-ish. And it's good to think of these as in a relationship. You're trying to relate. In general, it's just like stories. And this is something I'll go over in my when talking about story analysis soon. In stories, everything that can relate should relate. You're trying to relate everything. It's like a spider web. Everything should connect by some kind of network. Nothing is simply a thing. It's all related. It's all influencing everything else. And then I like to try to look for the more, I guess you could say, the more gestural side of the leg, so to speak, the part of the leg that more straightforwardly and obviously conveys what direction the leg is going in. So in this case, it's the outer part, kind of emphasizes that the legs are going down like that. And then you can just kind of put in the basics, the most essential part of the boot shape. Get that in. And then fill in the other side. And it's good to kind of close off the knee area so that you can easily compare the upper leg to the calf area as a distinct entity like that. Yeah, and then you do the other one. In this case, I'm going to actually go from the inner and then sort of signify, okay, you got this knee area like this. And then I'm going to pull this one down like that. And just note that you can't really see the shoe in the boot, the other boot in the original one, but you know it's going kind of like that. So I'm just going to kind of throw that line like that. And then the other part. And then the other part. And that's it. This is a basic gesture drawing. And this is very, very helpful. It's good to note where the proportions are fucked up from the original, but the proportions are actually not super, super important in this unless you are specifically doing them with the goal of correcting common proportional mistakes you make with a certain style. But obviously do try to get them the same. From here, you would be most concerned with analyzing just where you fucked up the actual gesture, the actual direction things are facing. Like, oh, okay, I might have made this too much at this angle or whatever. Maybe it's supposed to be more. Well, in this case, I actually would have to actually line them up to know exactly. But point is, that's what you do, and that's it. This is extremely helpful. You can do these by following Hyde. You can do these by taking an existing drawing like I did and, trying to imitate it. It's just one of the best ways to learn. So, as I said a couple times while showing this, originals are very important. Do originals because that's what's going to cement all the knowledge. That's what's going to bring up the questions for you to discover when you do this type of thing. It's what's going to solidify your actual performance. And I'll talk about what goes into that another time and stuff. But more importantly, I want you to understand how to actually just appreciate otaku art. So that's the important thing. It's less immediately important that you are striving to make it as you are striving to appreciate it, because that's the number one thing. That's the first thing. To understand it, to appreciate it, to dispel all the illusions going on right now in the West. So, yeah. You can post this video, you can share this on like IC or any sort of drawing Discord or whatever if you so choose. You can just get it around to art discussion circles, but it will probably be fairly controversial no matter where you throw it in the West, just because Based in Otaku Truth is a little too hot and heavy for Westerners at the moment, but I hope to see a landscape where we can one day handle it.